Have you ever wondered why some people begin their spiritual journey with such passion and dedication, only to stray from the path over time? How can someone who once knew God so intimately end up hardening their heart as the years go by? The story of Asa offers us a mirror to examine our own walk with God. This king ruled Judah for 41 years, and his life unfolds in two very distinct chapters, one of remarkable faithfulness and another of surprising disobedience. As we follow this narrative, I invite you to reflect on your own spiritual journey. In what areas have you been faithful like young Asa? Is there any part of your life where pride or self-sufficiency has started to replace your dependence on God? Prepare your heart, open your mind, and let's discover together what we can learn from the king who was blessed in the beginning and defeated in the end. A story that, even after thousands of years, still speaks directly to our hearts today. Young Asa was only 20 years old when he was crowned king of Judah. His father, King Abijah, had just passed away after a short reign of only 3 years. As 1 Kings 15:8 tells us, and Abijah rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David, and Asa his son succeeded him as king. The kingdom Asa inherited was in a dire spiritual state. For many years, the kings before him had turned away from the Lord. His grandfather Rehoboam and his father Abijah had not followed God wholeheartedly. Because of this, the people of Judah had also drifted away from God's ways. Throughout the land, you would find images of foreign gods. People worshipped idols on hilltops and under large trees. As 1 Kings 14:23-24 describes the time before Asa, they also set up for themselves high places, sacred stones and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every spreading tree. There were even male shrine prostitutes in the land. The people engaged in all the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. Asa looked at his spiritually divided kingdom and realized he had a choice to make: continue walking in the footsteps of his ancestors or turn the hearts of the people back to the God of Israel. Unlike his father and grandfather, Asa chose to follow the ways of the Lord. The Bible tells us in 1 Kings 15:11, Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as his father David had done. Wasting no time, Asa launched a sweeping reform across his kingdom. He didn't shy away from confronting the widespread pagan practices. With boldness and determination, he ordered the destruction of the foreign altars that had been built to worship false gods. He traveled throughout his kingdom, tearing down the Asherah poles, those wooden images dedicated to the goddess Asherah. He also removed the high places, hilltop sites where people carried out pagan rituals far from the temple in Jerusalem. As it says in 2 Chronicles 14:3-5, he removed the foreign altars and the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and to obey his laws and commands. He removed the high places and incense altars in every town in Judah, and the kingdom was at peace under him. One of Asa's most significant moves was to expel the male shrine prostitutes, individuals who took part in sexual rituals in pagan temples, which were completely against God's law. Asa made it clear he would not tolerate such practices in his kingdom, as we see in 1 Kings 15:12. He expelled the male shrine prostitutes from the land and got rid of all the idols his ancestors had made. Wherever he went, Asa destroyed the idols and images that defiled the land. He understood there could be no middle ground. You either served the Lord or you served idols. Asa's resolve to purify the kingdom was put to the test when idolatry hit close to home, his own family. His grandmother Maacah, who held the powerful position of Queen Mother, had made a disgusting image to worship the goddess Asherah. Many kings would have ignored this for the sake of family peace, but not Asa. He understood that no one was above God's law, not even royalty. As 1 Kings 15:13 recounts, he even deposed his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother because she had made a repulsive image for the worship of Asherah. Asa cut it down and burned it in the Kidron Valley. Imagine that scene! Asa didn't just remove her from her position, he publicly burned the idol she had made in the Kidron Valley. It was a bold, unmistakable message to the people. If even the Queen Mother had to obey God's commands, then so did everyone else. This act showed Asa's unwavering commitment to the Lord. He didn't let family ties stop him from doing what was right. As 2 Chronicles 15:16 says, King Asa also deposed his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother because she had made a repulsive image for Asherah. Asa cut it down, broke it up and burned it in the Kidron Valley. With the land cleansed of idolatry, Asa turned his focus to the temple in Jerusalem. For years, the temple had been neglected while previous kings chased after foreign gods. Asa made it his mission to restore proper worship in the temple. He brought back the sacred objects that had been taken or hidden during the years of unfaithfulness. The Bible tells us in 1 Kings 15:15, he brought into the temple of the Lord the silver and gold and the articles that he and his father had dedicated. He encouraged the people to bring offerings and tithes to God's house, re-establishing the system God had ordained through Moses. The daily sacrifices, which had been forgotten, were reinstated. The annual feasts, Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles and Pentecost, were celebrated once again, just as the law of Moses had commanded. The priests and Levites who had been removed from their duties, or who were performing them improperly, were called back to serve in the temple as God had commanded. 2 Chronicles 15:8 tells us, when Asa heard these words and the prophecy of Azariah son of Oded the prophet, he took courage. He removed the detestable idols from the whole land of Judah and Benjamin, and from the towns he had captured in the hills of Ephraim. He repaired the altar of the Lord that was in front of the portico of the Lord's temple. All this effort to purify the kingdom and restore worship to the Lord brought a great blessing upon Judah. The Bible tells us in 2 Chronicles 14:1, Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He removed the foreign altars and the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and to obey his laws and commands. The land had peace for 10 years. During those 10 years of peace, Asa did not remain idle. He used that time wisely to strengthen the kingdom's defenses. He built fortified cities throughout Judah, complete with high, strong walls, watchtowers, and bronze gates designed to withstand enemy attacks. The king also organized and trained a large army. As we read in 2 Chronicles 14:7-8, he said to Judah, "Let us build up these towns and put walls around them, with towers, gates, and bars. The land is still ours because we have sought the Lord our God. We sought him, and he has given us rest on every side." So they built and prospered. Asa had an army of 300,000 men from Judah, equipped with large shields and spears, and 280,000 from Benjamin, armed with small shields and bows. All these were brave fighting men. Asa understood that even in times of peace, it was crucial to be prepared for war. He assembled 300,000 warriors from the tribe of Judah, armed with large shields and spears. Alongside them were 280,000 skilled archers from the tribe of Benjamin, equipped with small shields and bows. It was a formidable, well-trained, and well-equipped army. But the peace of those first 10 years didn't last forever. One day, a messenger rushed into Asa's palace with alarming news. Zerah the Cushite was marching against Judah with a massive army and 300 chariots. This Cushite or Ethiopian army was enormous, an army of 1,000 thousands, says 2 Chronicles 14:9. Imagine 1,000,000 soldiers advancing toward you. They far outnumbered Asa's forces. Despite all his preparations, Asa knew he was at a disadvantage. He marched out with his army to confront the Cushites and took up position in the valley of Zephathah near the city of Mareshah. Seeing the size of the enemy army, Asa realized his own strength wouldn't be enough. That's when he did something that changed the course of the battle. He cried out to the Lord in a simple but faith-filled prayer. In 2 Chronicles 14:11 records his prayer. Then Asa called to the Lord his God and said, "Lord, there is no one like you to help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, Lord our God, for we rely on you, and in your name we have come against this vast army. Lord, you are our God. Do not let mere mortals prevail against you." What a beautiful prayer. Asa acknowledged that it makes no difference to God whether he helps the strong or the weak. He confessed his total dependence on the Lord and placed his trust not in his army but in God's name. And God heard Asa's prayer and responded with power. 2 Chronicles 14:12-13 tells us what happened. The Lord struck down the Cushites before Asa and Judah. The Cushites fled, and Asa and his army pursued them as far as Gerar. Such a great number of Cushites fell that they could not recover. They were crushed before the Lord and his forces. The men of Judah carried off a large amount of plunder. The enemy army was utterly defeated. The Lord struck the Cushites, causing confusion and panic among them. They fled in complete disorder, and Asa's forces pursued them all the way to Gerar, southwest of Judah. The victory was so decisive that the text says there was no more resistance among the Cushites. They were crushed before the Lord. It was clear to everyone that this wasn't just a military triumph, it was a divine intervention. Asa and his army conquered all the surrounding towns near Gerar that had supported the Cushites. The Bible says in 2 Chronicles 14:14-15, "They destroyed all the villages around Gerar, for the terror of the Lord had fallen on them. They plundered all these villages, since there was much booty there. They also attacked the camps of the herders and carried off droves of sheep and goats and camels. Then they returned to Jerusalem." After completely defeating their enemies, Asa and his troops returned to Jerusalem with abundant spoils of war, wealth, flocks of sheep, and camels. It was an incredible victory that strengthened Asa's reign and proved to the people the power of trusting in the Lord. On the way back from this victorious battle, something special happened. The Spirit of God came upon a prophet named Azariah, son of Oded. He went out to meet King Asa with an important message from the Lord. Chronicles 15:1-2 tells us, "The Spirit of God came on Azariah, son of Oded. He went out to meet Asa and said to him, 'Listen to me, Asa and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you, but if you forsake him, he will forsake you.'" The message was clear. As long as Asa and the people remained faithful to God, he would be with them. But if they abandoned him, he would also leave them. Azariah continued, reminding the king and the people of the hardships Israel had faced when they turned away from God. For a long time, Israel was without the true God, without a priest to teach, and without the law. But in their distress, they turned to the Lord, the God of Israel, and sought him, and he was found by them. 2 Chronicles 15:3-4. The prophet described how, during those times of unfaithfulness, there was no peace for those who came or went, because great turmoil fell on all the inhabitants of the lands. Nation rose against nation, and city against city, for God had troubled them with every kind of distress. 2 Chronicles 15:5-6. Azariah ended his message with words of encouragement to Asa. "But as for you, be strong and do not give up, for your work will be rewarded." 2 Chronicles 15:7. This prophetic message deeply moved Asa's heart. He understood that the victory over the Ethiopians was just the beginning. God wanted him to continue the work of spiritual reform in Judah. Inspired by the prophet Azariah's message, Asa was filled with new resolve and decided to intensify his reforms. The Bible says in 2 Chronicles 15:8, "When Asa heard these words and the prophecy of Azariah, son of Oded the prophet, he took courage. He removed the detestable idols from the whole land of Judah and Benjamin and from the towns he had captured in the hills of Ephraim. He repaired the altar of the Lord that was in front of the portico of the Lord's temple. Asa didn't limit his reforms to just Judah and Benjamin. He extended his efforts to the cities he had conquered in the hill country of Ephraim, further north. He also repaired the altar of the Lord that stood at the temple entrance. What happened next was incredible. People from other tribes of Israel, Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, began migrating to Judah. They had seen that the Lord was with Asa and wanted to be part of this spiritual revival. As 2 Chronicles 15:9 says, "Then he assembled all Judah and Benjamin and the people from Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon who had settled among them, for large numbers had come over to him from Israel when they saw that the Lord his God was with him." In the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign, the king organized a great assembly in Jerusalem. It was a historic event. People from all over the kingdom gathered to renew their covenant with God. During the assembly, they offered sacrifices to the Lord from the spoils they had taken in war, 700 oxen and 7,000 sheep. These were offerings of gratitude to God for the victory he had given them. 2 Chronicles 15:10-11 describes it this way: "They assembled in Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. At that time they sacrificed to the Lord 700 head of cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats from the plunder they had brought back. But the high point of the assembly came when the people made a solemn covenant to seek the Lord with all their hearts. This was no superficial promise. It was a total dedication to God. The most emotional moment of the assembly was when everyone publicly vowed loyalty to the Lord. The Bible describes it in 2 Chronicles 15:12-15. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, with all their heart and soul. All who would not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, were to be put to death, whether small or great, man or woman. They took an oath to the Lord with loud acclamation, with shouting and with trumpets and horns. All Judah rejoiced about the oath because they had sworn it wholeheartedly. They sought God eagerly, and he was found by them. So the Lord gave them rest on every side. Just imagine the scene, thousands of people shouting their oath of loyalty to God with loud acclamation as trumpets and horns filled the air. It was a powerful atmosphere of celebration and commitment. The text says, "All Judah rejoiced about the oath," because they weren't doing it out of duty, but wholeheartedly and with eagerness. The covenant even included a harsh clause. Anyone who didn't seek the Lord, the God of Israel, would be put to death, man or woman, great or small. It was a radical commitment to exclusive worship of the one true God. And what was the result of this national commitment? The Bible tells us that the Lord gave them rest on every side. Peace returned to Asa's kingdom. No nation dared to attack them because they saw that the Lord was with them, that peace would last for many years. As we read in 2 Chronicles 15:19, there was no more war until the 35th year of Asa's reign. For 35 years, more than 3 decades, Judah lived in peace under Asa's leadership. It was a time of prosperity and security, a direct result of the king's and the people's faithfulness to the Lord their God. But after 35 years of peace and prosperity, Asa's life was about to take a dramatic turn. In the 36th year of his reign, dark clouds appeared on the horizon. A threat from the north dramatically shifted the kingdom's political landscape. Baasha, king of Israel, the northern kingdom, came up against Judah. This wasn't just a simple invasion for territory. Baasha had a much more cunning plan in mind. The Bible tells us in 2 Chronicles 16:1, in the 36th year of Asa's reign, Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and fortified Ramah to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the territory of Asa, king of Judah. Baasha began strengthening and fortifying the city of Ramah, located just 8 kilometers north of Jerusalem. This city was strategically placed on the main road that connected Jerusalem to the rest of the world. By fortifying Ramah, Baasha effectively blocked all trade routes leading to Judah's capital. It was a brilliant strategy of economic strangulation. With the roads blocked, no goods could come in or go out of Jerusalem. No merchants, no travelers, no pilgrims could pass through. As the text says, the goal was to prevent anyone from leaving or entering Asa's territory. In a short time, Judah began facing a severe supply crisis. Food became scarce, prices soared, communication with other regions was cut off. Without trade, Judah's economy was under serious threat. Asa found himself in a desperate situation. The siege didn't involve an army at the city gates, but it was just as effective. If things continued that way, Jerusalem would slowly be choked without a single battle being fought. So what would Asa do in the face of this threat? In earlier times, when he faced the massive Ethiopian army, he had sought the Lord in prayer. But something had changed in the king's heart. Instead of calling upon the Lord as he had before, Asa decided to pursue a purely political solution. He looked at the map and saw a way out. Syria, ruled by King Ben-Hadad, was a regional power that could help him against Israel. Asa made a decision that revealed how much his heart had changed. Chronicles 16:2-3 tells us, "Then Asa took the silver and gold from the treasuries of the Lord's temple and of the royal palace, and sent it to Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus. 'Let there be a treaty between me and you,' he said, 'as there was between my father and your father. See, I am sending you silver and gold. Now break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so he will withdraw from me.'" Just imagine, Asa emptied the treasures of the temple, the very same temple he had restored years earlier. He took the sacred silver and gold items, added the wealth from the royal palace, and sent it all as a gift to Ben-Hadad. In his message to the Syrian king, Asa proposed, "Let there be a treaty between me and you, as there was between my father and your father." He was trying to reactivate an old alliance from a previous generation. But the real request followed immediately. "Break your treaty with Baasha, king of Israel, so he will withdraw from me." Asa was asking Syria to betray its current alliance with Israel and attack its northern ally. It was a plea for disloyalty. Paid. But with treasures that had been consecrated to God. At first glance, Asa's plan seemed to work perfectly. Ben-Hadad accepted the gifts and did exactly what Asa asked. The Bible tells us in 2 Chronicles 16:4-5, Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his forces against the towns of Israel. They conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and all the store cities of Naphtali. When Baasha heard this, he stopped building Ramah and abandoned his work. The Syrian armies invaded northern Israel and captured key cities like Ijon, Dan, and Abel-Maim. They also took over all the fortified store cities of Naphtali, which were vital hubs for storing food and supplies. This surprise attack put Baasha in an impossible position. He couldn't fight on two fronts at once. With his northern territory under invasion, Baasha had no choice but to abandon his project in Ramah. He stopped building the fortifications and pulled his troops back to defend his own kingdom from Syria. As soon as Baasha's forces left Ramah, Asa acted swiftly. Chronicles 16:6 records, "Then King Asa brought all the men of Judah, and they carried away from Ramah the stones and timber Baasha had been using. With them he built up Geba and Mizpah." Asa mobilized all the men of Judah and ordered them to dismantle the fortifications Baasha had been building in Ramah. Every stone and beam of wood was taken and repurposed. With these materials, Asa strengthened two cities in his own territory, Geba and Mizpah, both located near the border with Israel. From a political and military standpoint, Asa's strategy was a smashing success. The blockade was broken. Trade routes reopened. The immediate threat was neutralized, and not a single soldier died in battle. Any military advisor would have praised the king's cunning. But God sees things differently than men do. While Asa celebrated his political victory, a man of God named Hanani, a prophet, came to meet him. He carried a hard message the king didn't want to hear. Chronicles 16:7-9 records Hanani's words. At that time, Hanani the seer came to Asa, king of Judah, and said to him, "Because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord, your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hand. Were not the Cushites and Libyans a mighty army with great numbers of chariots and horsemen? Yet when you relied on the Lord, He delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. You have done a foolish thing, and from now on you will be at war." Hanani's message was blunt and clear. He pointed out Asa's critical mistake, "Because you relied on the king of Aram and not on the Lord your God." The prophet reminded the king how God had once delivered him from a much greater enemy, the Ethiopians and Libyans, with their vast armies of chariots and horsemen. Back then, Asa had trusted in the Lord, and God had given him victory. But now, when facing a smaller threat, Asa had chosen human help over divine. Then Hanani revealed a beautiful truth about God. The eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. God is always searching for people who will trust Him completely so He can show His power through them. But the prophecy ended with a sobering judgment. From now on, you will be at war. The peace that Judah had enjoyed for 35 years was about to end. Asa's wrong choice would have lasting consequences. So how did Asa respond to this prophetic rebuke? Unfortunately, not like the humble young king who once cried out to God in the valley of Zephathah. Something in his heart had changed over the years. Chronicles 16:10 tells us, Asa was angry with the seer because of this. He was so enraged that he put him in prison. At the same time, Asa brutally oppressed some of the people. Asa became furious with God's messenger. Instead of receiving the divine correction and repenting, he threw Hanani into prison, a place referred to as the House of Stocks. Stocks were a device of torture where a person's feet, hands, or neck were locked into wooden holes, forcing them into painful positions. It was a cruel and humiliating punishment, and Asa didn't stop there. The text says that at the same time Asa brutally oppressed some of the people. It seems that anyone who dared agree with Hanani or question the king's decision also faced persecution. This behavior showed that Asa had become intolerant of any criticism or correction. His heart, once open to God's voice, had become hardened. He didn't want to hear the truth, only praise for his actions, even when they were clearly wrong. There's a saying, power tends to corrupt. And it seems that after decades on the throne, Asa had allowed pride to take root in his heart. He was no longer the humble servant of God. He had become a king who demanded absolute obedience and wouldn't tolerate being questioned, not even by a prophet sent by the Lord. Several years passed, and Asa faced another challenge, this time a deeply personal one. The Bible tells us in 2 Chronicles 16:12, in the 39th year of his reign, Asa was afflicted with a disease in his feet. Though his disease was severe, even in his illness he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa was struck by a severe disease in his feet. The biblical text describes the condition as very severe, indicating that it caused intense and debilitating pain. Although the Bible does not specify the exact illness, many scholars believe it may have been gout, a form of arthritis known for sudden attacks of intense pain, redness, and tenderness in the joints, particularly at the base of the big toe. Gout was often referred to as the disease of kings because it was associated with a luxurious lifestyle, rich in food and drink, inaccessible to the poor. Regardless of the specific diagnosis, what matters is that the condition was excruciating and likely limited Asa's mobility, especially considering his advanced age. What stands out most in this passage, however, is the final remark. Even in his illness, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. There is nothing wrong with seeking medical help when we are ill. The issue was Asa's choice to rely exclusively on the doctors without turning to God. This attitude revealed that Asa's heart remained hardened, even when confronted with a painful and serious illness that could have led him to reflection and repentance. Asa held onto a posture of self-reliance. He sought only human solutions, completely ignoring the Lord who had guided and protected him for most of his life. The final years of Asa's life stood in stark contrast to the beginning of his reign. He who had once been a devout reformer now ended his days as a bitter and hardened ruler. The kingdom that had enjoyed decades of peace and prosperity under his leadership was now plagued by ongoing conflicts, just as Hanani had prophesied. From now on, you will be at war. The political alliances Asa had forged instead of trusting in God failed to bring the lasting security he had hoped for. Asa's physical condition mirrored his spiritual state. Just as his feet were diseased and unable to support him properly, his faith had weakened and could no longer sustain him in difficult times. The physical pain he experienced daily reflected the deterioration of his relationship with God. This king, who had once led a national spiritual renewal, destroyed idols, restored the temple, and guided the people back to true worship, was now relying solely on human means. He sought comfort in the hands of physicians, strength through foreign armies, and security in material wealth. Asa spent his final years in physical pain and spiritual isolation. The Bible does not record any repentance or return to God during this closing chapter of his life. On the contrary, the last spiritual note we receive about him is, he did not seek help from the Lord, but only from the physicians. What a sad ending for a king who had started so well. A life that once shone as a beacon of faithfulness now faded slowly into the shadows of pride and self-reliance. After 41 years on the throne of Judah, Asa's reign came to an end. The Bible records in 1 Kings 15:23-24. As for all the other events of Asa's reign, all his achievements, and all the cities he built, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? In his old age, however, his feet became diseased. Then Asa rested with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of his father David, and Jehoshaphat his son succeeded him as king. Chronicles 16:13-14 provides additional details about his death and funeral. Then Asa rested with his ancestors and died in the 41st year of his reign. They buried him in the tomb that he had cut out for himself in the city of David. They laid him on a bier covered with spices and various blended perfumes, and they made a huge fire in his honor. Asa was buried with great honor in Jerusalem, in the city of David. His body was placed in a tomb he had prepared for himself during his lifetime. It was customary for kings to prepare their tombs in advance, and Asa had followed this tradition. The text says his body was laid on a bier covered with spices and various blended perfumes. These spices and aromatic ointments were used in embalming to slow decomposition and mask the smell of death. This practice was reserved for individuals of great importance. Moreover, they made a huge fire in his honor. This was not a cremation, but a ceremonial burning of perfumes, spices, and perhaps some of the king's personal belongings, a tribute reserved for kings respected by the people. Despite the failures of his later years, the people of Judah still honored Asa's memory, especially for the early part of his reign when he had led the nation back to God. Jehoshaphat, his son, succeeded him as king. With a 41-year reign, Asa had one of the longest governments among the kings of Judah. Only Manasseh, 55 years, and Uzziah, 52 years, ruled longer. This longevity gave Asa the opportunity to leave a deep mark on the history of his people. Yet his legacy is defined by a dramatic contrast between the beginning and the end of his reign. The first 35 years were marked by faithfulness to God, significant religious reforms, and divine blessings. During this time, Asa removed idolatry from the land, restored the temple, strengthened the nation militarily, and led the people in renewed commitment to the Lord. However, the final 6 years tell a different story, one of pride, self-sufficiency, and spiritual decline. Asa, who once trusted God fully in the face of a massive Ethiopian army, now sought security through political alliances. The king who once purified the temple was now plundering its treasures to buy foreign aid. This contrast made Asa a powerful biblical example of how someone can finish poorly after starting with excellence. His life illustrates a sobering truth. It's not enough to start well. You have to persevere to the very end. What caused this change in Asa's heart? The Bible doesn't say explicitly, but we can find some clues. Maybe it was the pride that grew after years of success and prosperity. Maybe it was the comfort and security that made him forget his dependence on God. Or maybe it was simply the weariness that came from decades of leadership, which led him to seek easier, quicker solutions. Whatever the cause, Asa's reign stands as a warning to all of us. As the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 10:12, "So, if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall." No one, not even a king who served God faithfully for decades, is immune to the dangers of pride and self-reliance. Asa's story reminds us that faith isn't a one-time event, it's a lifelong journey. Every day brings new challenges and new opportunities to choose whether we'll trust in God or rely on our own strength. And in the end, it's the sum of those daily choices that defines the legacy we leave behind. If this story spoke to your heart and gave you something to reflect on, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to our channel to discover more inspiring stories from the Bible that can help transform your spiritual walk. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family who might also need to hear this message. Every share can reach someone who needs this exact word today. Together, we can spread these eternal truths that still matter just as much today. See you in the next video with another fascinating story from Scripture.